kick things off, we have a performance by Toni Yagami, Leslie Young, and Sue Hoopford. Welcome to the stage.
each other from 1999. She was like 2 and I was, 6. Sorry. There is a switch.
Things working.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, there is a switch. So I knew her as a Taiko player. Is it?
I don't know what's working. go. I think you're good.
Now? Oh! I usually have such a big voice, I almost blow the microphone out. I thought, oh no, did I do that? So, Amy and I knew each other way back when I was actually living in California for a while. Moved back to Colorado, so she was the one that kind of got me involved here, and so when I started, yeah, she didn't know she was going to come up and play today, so thank you so much. We played a couple of songs, basically two songs kind of mashed together in the sense of preserve. The first part, a little bit boring, where Sue starts on one, Leslie starts on the Atarigane, and I come in on the other part. Very traditional, way back when. Usually played by 5 people, usually men, and they would play this for hours while a parade was happening, a festival parade, and that same pattern, 3 separate patterns that are meshed together over and over and over. And then when we switched into a kind of the kumi daiko style of playing, where there's a lot of drums playing, a bigger group, and that was kind of a matsuri style. And that's kind of what the North American taiko groups are based on, that kind of a style now, so that's what we played. So now we'd like to do one more song for you before I actually do start talking more. And this one is called San Ni, Japanese 3-2. Well, the reason for 3-2 is because it's the 3-2 clave pattern. So definitely not traditional, but this is kind of where we've gone. Sometimes we go from traditional to non-traditional.
Do I just hit the mute button?
There you go.
Okay.
very mechanical or very high-tech at all. So, as mentioned, Leslie works down at the public library, and she's working at 10, so she's So thank you so much for having us here, like I said, because I know Amy, and then Amy knows, where'd she go? Rachel. She does. And that's how we met for coffee one day while Amy was in town. So, and they were talking about this and said, well, do you think maybe you want to do, you know, and so thank you so much for having us come. We're having a great time. Preserve. Yeah, preserve is interesting. The fact that I'm Sansei, or third generation Japanese American. My grandparents, both sides, came over from Japan really early 1900s. My dad's side, they knew each other when they came. My dad's side, my grandfather on that side, worked the railroad from California and came to Colorado, and that's how my family settled in southeastern Colorado in Swink, between Lahana and Rocky Ford. Great cantaloupes, watermelons, tomatoes, that's what we did. I grew up doing that. My mom's side, my grandparents there went north and settled in Oregon, and they ran like a convenience store, I guess, a bodega kind of thing in Portland. During World War II, my mom's side was relocated to an internment camp in Minidoka, Idaho, and my dad's side was not, because further inland, and Governor Carr, a beautiful man, did not intern the Japanese Americans, so they did not have to go. And my mom and dad, both being born in America, were basically United States citizens, but my mom's family was moved to the camp. I had two uncles who did join the 442nd Army Battalion, so they did fight in World War II. Both were injured, but they did come back alive, and they have scars, but they are no longer alive. I guess my Uncle Charles is still alive. But he's about the last one of that family. So preserve is interesting because after the war, both sides' families were told basically not to cling to your cultural roots, to basically fit into America so that you would be part from, be an American, I guess. And they did. And so when my mom and dad got together, my mom's family moved down to Utah to run a canning factory because that was one of the jobs that was available for the whole family to do. And because my grandparents knew each other, that's how my mom and dad got together. So born and raised, Colorado native here, but raised in southeast Colorado, very non-Asian. You know, we had like 6 or 8 families because they all come there through the railroad. We're working farms and stuff like that, and then everybody started their own farms. We had the vegetable markets. I mean, I was selling at my aunt's vegetable market from about 3rd grade, I guess, you know. So it was interesting, but you know, I never thought of myself as Japanese or Asian. We had once a month, the ministers, the reverends from the Tri-State Buddhist Temple here in Denver would make the rounds to 3 different states, and once a month they would come down to Swink. We had a little church, and that was our culture, basically. That was about all we knew. We celebrated Hana Matsuri, which was April. We did dancing, and we had fun things like that. But most of my recollections of church, of our services, was the fact that farmers work until really late. So the reverend would do his service, but most of the men weren't there. It was always just the women and the children. And the farmers would come in because we would have potluck, because obviously, you know, they were working, the wives were there, so the dinner came to the church. So short service, potluck, and the reverend at the time would bring these older black and white samurai movies. And so that was, to me, church was great. You know, you sat down and pretty soon you ate, and pretty soon you got to watch movies. And so that was wonderful. That was a great culture, I thought. Graduated, got my music degree after college is when I started doing Japanese stuff. Not taiko right off. I didn't even know taiko back then. I learned the koto, which is that long, 6-foot-long instrument you play sitting on the floor. I did tea ceremony. I did shamisen, the three-stringed instrument. A little bit of shakuhachi, dancing, okay, all that stuff. I even tried calligraphy. That was really hard for me. I was not good at that. I saw Denver taiko performing at Sakura Matsuri, the Cherry Blossom Festival, and I wanted to join them. I said, oh my gosh, they're jumping around, they're having fun, they're yelling. And I'm in this kimono and I'm trying to be quiet and demure and walking like this and saying, okay, all right, this isn't working too well. I asked Denver Taiko to join and they said, oh, we're not open to new members. Okay, sure. So I said, okay, well, let me know whenever you are. Took them like a year and a half before their membership dropped from about 8 to 4, and they said it'd be 4 people. So 4 of us joined. We kind of changed the attitude of Denver Taiko, which was great in some ways, but one thing that Denver Taiko had as a policy, because they were based at the Denver Buddhist Temple, the membership of the group had to be a member of the church, which was fine, or Japanese. Anybody that was not could not be a member of Denver Taiko. And I understood that because I also kind of liked that for a little bit, because I said, oh, well, this is where I can be, with my own Japanese group. And then the more I thought about it, it's like, this doesn't quite feel right, though. But, we had fun. We did all these performances, all this thing. And then, as I really wanted to do more with Taiko, 1988, I moved to California because I had friends in San Jose and joined San Jose Taiko. And when I got out there, it was like, wow, there's so many more Asians out here. I'm not the minority anymore. And it was really wonderful. And, started doing them, and I noticed that there were non-Asians playing with the group, and everybody knew about Taiko, and it's something Asian. And that's where I really realized that it was very important to not be so close-minded in some ways, but I understood why. I mean, there was nowhere for me to be something that was all Japanese. And so I stayed in San Jose until 1995, came back to Denver and got married to my husband, Lance Acker, who's been, I don't know if you guys, some of you are too young probably, but Lance played like 21 years with the Queen City Jazz Band. And so he retired a few years ago from there, and he plays with us normally. He would have been here today, but we're just not morning people. So he was still sleeping when I left. So I brought in a couple of my members, Sue and Leslie, who are morning people. And they've been playing with me for, 6 years now? About that. And the fun thing about our group is that we're definitely not all Asian, not all Japanese. We have a wide variety of people. We do have some Japanese people and some not, obviously. But it's fun because the whole thing of appreciation versus appropriation, I really think that's important. The people that come join our group, every once in a while we'll get somebody that doesn't quite get that. They come in thinking that they have a different idea of why they want to play with us or why they want to play drums. It's fun for one thing, but we play because we have respect for the culture, respect for the drums, all that. And those people usually don't stay with us. They know that, they learn that, or they understand it, and they just don't feel like they fit in. So they do leave. We had a few people that have been like that and come in and then do leave. But it's very important to me, coming from my parents who were told not to have, keep their culture going. They kind of dropped it. And so my generation, the third generation, kind of tried to bring that back up. Now there's already a fourth and a fifth generation. The fifth generation of Japanese Americans are probably definitely not Japanese 100% anymore. Most people now, by the time they're fifth generation, have intermarried somewhere along the way, and so we truly feel like we're very American. I mean, the melting pot, we've come in that way. So it's hard when you think about keeping culture, a cultural art form. Do we keep it straight? Traditional only? If we did, I don't think it would survive. We don't have enough people to do that. Like a lot of the martial arts organizations, if you look, there's probably more non-Asians than Asians. And yet, at first that used to bother me too, and I'm thinking, well, but at least they're out there doing that. This art form, this martial arts form is surviving because of that. Sometimes, yeah, it changes, and if you go to Japan, which I've been lucky enough to do since around when Amy and I went in 2001, we were there when 9/11 happened, we were in Japan, so that was also a little scary. But since then, I've gone back every couple of years, and I truly enjoy being in Japan. And I do learn things that a lot of the Japanese instructors that came over in the 50s and 60s have not gone back, a lot of them, and so they're teaching from what they learned before that. And then when I go back, it's like, whoa, this has really changed. So even in Japan, the culture, the traditional art forms are changing. They're doing different things. If you look on like NHK or YouTube, all the performers are definitely very influenced by the Western culture. And sometimes when you look at the American performances, it's like, whoa, okay, we're a lot more old style traditional than what Japan is now. So it's kind of interesting. I do believe that it's great to keep the culture going, and I feel the need to do that. We're performing June 22nd downtown, Sakura Matsuri Cherry Blossom Festival. So if anybody's around, we're down at the Denver Buddhist Temple, 19th and Lawrence. Yeah, 19th and Lawrence. We will play there. We play the first weekend in March at Simpson United Methodist Church for their Hina Matsuri, or their doll festival. So we do a lot of performing at the cultural Japanese arts kind of festivals, and so we enjoy doing that. And like I said, it is very important to keep this alive. We go to schools. We're actually going to a school next Friday, the Friday after that, where in California it was no big deal. I mean, half the kids when I started doing school shows in California, oh yeah, they do Taiko, they've seen it, they've been to performances. When I first came back in '95 and asked that same question, when I walked in the school, kids would say, oh, you're going to do Kung Fu today, okay. Well, not quite, I don't know how. So I would if I could, but I don't know how. Besides, that's not quite what I'm doing. But now when we go, it's like the teachers are helping as well. They're trying to prepare their kids and telling them what the thing is, what Japanese culture they know about. Boulder Ballet schools, first grade, all study Japan, which is great. And so it's kind of fun. I mean, when I go down and ask kids that, I'd say a third to half of the kids already know what Taiko is, and they'll know a little bit about the Japanese culture. So it's kind of, I like that, and I think it's very important for people to have that background, especially, you know, the World War II history. A lot of people don't know that. It's not taught in schools, or it wasn't, at least when I was in school. And I think it's very important, especially nowadays with so much of the immigration happening and non-immigrant, or the anti-immigration, all the different people being upset at different races, different cultures, and it's like, it's tough. I know America's kind of getting full, but, you know, having been there with my family, it's like, but you know, we've got to figure this out. We've got to make room for people. And I know not everybody's good people, but we still have to figure that out. So, and for my heart, I mean, to me, whoever is involved or likes a different culture and accepts that culture, the appreciation versus appropriation, I think is so important. I mean, there are groups that, yes, will come in and want to take over the culture, and we have a few of those. We were on a trip recently with a couple of people like that, and you know, I'm part of the co-lead of the group, the trip. And this one person from the Midwest, who's not Asian, you know, well, I've been doing this for this many years, which is great, you know, but, you know, then there were some other ones too. I know you guys, there's some Canadian organizations with your group, and Australian people. So we took, you know, a wide variety of people to Japan to study. And when they're trying to tell me about my culture, I'm going, okay, wait, what? So it just depends. I mean, I appreciate the fact that they were so into it that they wanted to tell me, but yet it's like, okay, but I've been there, I lived it, you know, and so it's kind of hard. Being so excited about somebody else's culture is great, but, and I agree, sometimes had I not gotten into this, yeah, I would have been going, oh wow, I didn't know that happened. I mean, like, I didn't know what Taiko was at first. So it does happen, but if you're into somebody else's culture, please appreciate it. You know, don't try to take over. Learn more from what they do. So, and I guess does anybody have any questions? I keep talking, I'm sorry.
kind of touched on it a little bit, but in my work, I'm dealing a lot with diversity and inclusion right now, and each time I run into someone from another culture who's willing to talk about this, I ask, what is your simplest definition or way to let the rest of us know what is the difference between appreciation and appropriation? And if we are appreciating another culture, how do we do that respectfully?
Good question. She's asking how people from another culture, and she asks them, you know, what do you define as appreciation versus appropriation? And that is tough, you know, because in the same way of saying, okay, you know, I want you involved in my culture, don't take it over, you know, but the appreciation is to, I think, accept and learn, for one thing, and yeah, it's hard. It's hard to say, so much enthusiasm, please don't be so enthused about this, but please be enthused. So, yeah, that is a tough one. And I think it depends on the person, their personality, the person that's trying to become or be included with that. It's difficult. Our big North American Taiko conference, which we have every 2 years, will be held in Portland, Oregon this August. There are over 2,500, something like that, Taiko players in North America. And we get like about 600 that come to these conferences. And our big theme for Taiko Community Alliance, which is our big nationwide organization, we always preach inclusion. You know, accept everybody and include everybody. And even and that's difficult because we have so many non-Asians, I guess I should say. It is hard. We have people that think their mindset is what ours is, or I shouldn't even say that, or what mine is, I guess. I have to be more specific. And they're not to me. And I have to accept and say, okay, well, maybe I'm not always right. Okay, let's change it to your way, but it does change. But I have to step back sometimes and say, this is changing way too much for me. I need to say, I'd rather we kept it within this part. So that is a tough question because you want people to be included, you want people to be involved, but it's hard to say, okay, now don't step on my toes here. Yeah. I think it kind of depends on what every culture is a little bit different.
Thank you.
What was it like for your family when you started to adopt more of your traditional practices?
She asked what my family felt when I started playing. Well, being farmers, you know, go ahead and do it. You know, but when I first started, what I understood as Japanese when I was growing up as a little kid, my grandparents, because we had very many from Mexico workers that worked for farms with us, my grandparents spoke to me in a very rough, broken Japanese Mexican language, and I thought that was Japanese because they were speaking to me, and I didn't know the difference. So when I started performing, I started getting into, well, when I first went as music school, my first thing that my mom said was, really? So you're going to make a living doing that? It's like, well, maybe. But she was working in the schools at the time. I said, well, I can always be a music teacher, right? So, okay, so that was okay. When I started, and I left teaching after 2 years and said I wanted to do this, and I was working in an office at the same time. And that was okay, because this was a side thing, you know. In 1988, when I quit my office job and moved to California, and they said, why? Well, I'm going to go play Taiko. Okay. And it was like, I have friends out there, and basically the Taiko groups at the time in the 90s were very tight, very family-oriented, and so it was kind of like, well, they'll take care of me, and they really did. And so my parents, you know, I'm not raised traditionally, so I was not the quiet female, you know, that follows directions and follows behind people. My mom was very strong, so that she was like, well, that's your choice. If you're going to do it, just know that you're responsible for it. So it's kind of like I had to make it work if I did it. But I think that's some of the things that a lot of the Asian women would not be able to make that choice because they were raised, you know, wait to be asked, wait to do this kind of thing. But for me, it was easier. I guess I just did it because my mom raised me that way. So hopefully that answered it. I kind of go off. So.
You've shared your journey of finding your own culture, which seems to be sort of a mix of the American and the Japanese. Are there other cultures that you are the appreciator for rather than the appropriator? Are there?
Okay, for personally? Okay, so the question is, are there other cultures that, that I appreciate versus appropriate other than the Japanese culture? One, for sure, I guess, I always wanted to do the folklorico dance in the Mexican style, and I couldn't, because my feet felt good. But I always thought that was cool, so I did, and being raised in a very Hispanic area, that was what we did. We celebrated at their festivals and stuff too, so definitely appreciate the Latin culture. But that's probably about as far as my reach was. I don't know, because Sue, Sue and Leslie both studied African drumming and dancing before they joined Taiko. You want to, yeah. Anything about that?
I always think of it as being sort of from the outside looking in for me in other cultures, because they are not my culture. I have a very strong farm, fruit-growing family culture that isn't here. And so for me, it's more an appreciation of. I also lived in Japan when I was in high school and got to do a lot of the arts as a kid, really. The tea ceremony, the dance, not Taiko drumming because girls didn't do that then in the 70s. But to me, it's just a great appreciation, and it helps you to understand, for me, just an appreciation of where other people come from, because it is different and wonderful at the same time. So I just have an appreciation for it.
And I make them wear these costumes. Our costumes are kind of based on semi-traditional, I guess. I can't afford completely. When we play full out on our festivals, we have like 22 people, I think, on stage. And if you buy the costumes, the hoppies only, they're probably the cheap ones are at least 30, and the nicer ones are probably $50 to $70. So I make ours instead. So they're kind of based loosely on tradition. So, and I know it's almost like
Let's do one more.
Okay, one more question. Okay, back there.
Hi. I was wondering, from your perspective, what about Taiko might be the most, especially thinking about preservation, what would be the thing about Taiko for you that's the most relevant today? These times?
Okay, through Taiko preservation, the one thing that I guess preserving, which is hard, the thing that we played at the very beginning, that very kind of almost, I should say boring, Endobayashi, which is just the same pattern over and over and over, which is wonderful, but at a certain point it's like, okay, are they going to quit? That and Gagaku, which is the very traditional classical version of it. They play on the small drums, they have the hichiriki, which are the reed instruments, they have almost like no-style theater. So for Japanese, the Taiko came from that. For me, the festival style of playing, the kumi daiko, where we're all playing together, I think the preservation of that is good because it brings people together, not only just Japanese Americans, or Japanese or non-Japanese Americans, and we can show that it's something, for me, Taiko is something that everybody could do. It's not like the typical classical dance where only specific people could do certain things because it's really hard. Taiko is easier to do. It's easier to be involved in the culture. And again, there's Taiko groups all over South America and Europe, which are definitely not Japanese. They're completely non-Asian. And that's good and bad in some ways. I see some of those groups and I'm thinking, whoa, how did they get started? But yet they're preserving this Japanese culture, changing it along the way. But I think that's also important to, to have that out there. Obviously, our drums are Japanese style drums or from Japan. And sometimes you see people that are playing on drums that are not. And so it's like, well, where does it become being Taiko and being just a percussion group? So that's a hard one because we're facing that a lot now too. So for me, I like the fact, I should say, that by using real Taiko, this style that we played this morning is more straight up and down and not a lot of moving. We do other ones where we're doing the full Taiko, play with your whole body, your whole spirit. And to me, that's what the real Taiko is, where we're doing, you forget the audience is there, you're just into your playing. And that's, I think, with the preservation of that feeling, becoming one with the drum. Taiko came from very spiritual. We do believe the body of the drum was a tree, that spirit was cut down. The skin that we play on is cowhide. Again, the cow was killed. The ropes are cotton fibers or hemp fibers, the plants were given to us, and or the tacks are from Mother Earth, the minerals. So we believe that three things were killed, I guess, in the sense, to become a taiko, and so their spirits become part of that drum. So we have to connect with the spirit of each of the individual taikos when we play. So we do have a very close feeling with the drums when we play. So the preservation of the spirit of the drum, as well as the culture and everything behind it when we play, whether you're Japanese or not Japanese. Sorry, I ramble.